Presidential leadership on dealing with the national debt over the course of my entire lifetime has been something that has really gone along party lines. In empirical terms, Democrats have done a much better job than Republicans have. Now, if that feels counterintuitive to you, if there's a voice in your head that's saying, hey, wait, the Republicans are the fiscal conservatives, it's the Democrats who are the irresponsible profligate spenders, if there is a voice in your head that is saying that, that's because the press has been quite content to listen to what Republicans say they are doing rather than actually reporting on what they are doing on fiscal issues. A perfect case in point today on Capitol Hill. Senate Republicans holding a press conference that they say is all about, well, here, listen.
We have a great opportunity here to demonstrate that we are responding to what the American people clearly would like for us to do. Cut the spending, cut the debt.
Hopefully the Democrats will join us as we embark upon an agenda that tries to rein in out-of-control government, get spending and debt under control.
We have clearly heard the American people say focus on jobs, the economy, the debt, and the spending, and they were screaming out loud, stop the spending.
Stop the spending, cut the debt. That's what Republicans say their priorities are. Cutting the deficit, cutting the debt. That's what they say they are doing. What are they actually proposing to do?
Republicans are absolutely determined to oppose any tax increase on any American in the coming months. We're going to continue to fight in the House to make sure that no American sees a tax increase on January 1, not one.
Tax cuts! Tax cuts first priority. Now, of course, both parties want tax cuts right now for the first $250,000 of income that anyone earns. The difference between the two parties, the difference between Democrats and Republicans, is that Republicans want to make sure that you get tax cuts on any income you earn over your first $250,000. According to Republicans, if you make more than $250,000 a year, you should get a tax cut on all of the income above that level, in addition to getting tax cuts on income below that level. In order to achieve just that extra amount of tax cuts, just for the rich people, just for people earning over $250,000, Republicans are in order to do that, Republicans are willing to add $700 billion to the debt. $700 billion. In addition to tax cuts, Senate Republicans also laid out this objective today.
And certainly, the new health care law, we're going to work together to repeal and replace this health care law.
Repeal health reform. On the same day that Republicans redoubled their efforts to kill health reform, the Nonpartisan Government Accountability Office highlighted that the Democrats' new health reform law, if fully implemented, would result in a, quote, notable improvement in the long-term debt outlook. Earlier this year, the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office calculated that health reform would reduce the deficit by $138 billion. Republicans apparently want that $138 billion added back onto the deficit. Then there's the issue of defense spending. A majority of all the discretionary spending that we have in this country is defense spending. And because Republicans want to be thought of as fiscal conservatives, a number of Republicans who have just been elected to office are now making noises that they'd be willing to consider defense cuts. That is fiscally great in the abstract. The problem is when it comes down to actually making those decisions. Here's the top Republican on the House side. His name is Republican Congressman Buck McKeon of California. He's the top Republican on the House Armed Services Committee. What does he think about this defense cuts idea? Yesterday, Mr. McKeon said of the defense cuts, quote, "Let me put this in the simplest terms possible. Cutting defense spending amidst two wars is a red line for me, and should be a red line for all Americans." On the Senate side, the top Republican on the Armed Services Committee is a man you might have heard of named John McCain. Senator John McCain now leading the charge in the Republican Party against anyone in his party who would dare suggest any cuts to defense. Yesterday, he went after Republican Rand Paul, saying, quote, "Already he has talked about withdrawals from or cuts in defense, etc. And a number of others are too. So I worry a lot about the rise of protectionism and isolationism in the Republican Party." In other words, defense cuts, not on my watch. And I'm the guy who's on watch for our party on this. Last month, 57 members of Congress signed onto a report that proposed $960 billion worth of cuts that could come out of the defense budget. Precisely one Republican was willing to put his name on that, one, Congressman Ron Paul of Texas. One of that report's biggest ticket proposed cuts was nuclear weapons. since, you know, we already have more than 5,000 of them, and you can only blow up the world so many times. So let's save a little money, right? Let's maybe cut back on the nuclear weapons. That would save a lot of money. Republican Senator John Kyle of Arizona is the Republican who is making the direct Republican response to that. As of today, John Kyle's response has been to secure $14 billion of brand new nuclear weapons spending from the Obama administration, and he's apparently holding out for more. In case you were curious just how serious Republicans are about cutting defense, that's what we've got so far. And of course, it's an article of faith that Republicans are totally against cap-and-trade climate legislation, right? The Congressional Budget Office estimates that cap-and-trade, which remember was a Republican idea in the first place, cap-and-trade would reduce the deficit by $19 billion. Republicans are against that too. Think about the distance between what Republicans say they are doing and what they are actually proposing. Republicans spent all day bragging about how much they want to cut the deficit, while simultaneously proposing adding to the deficit $700 billion, plus $138 billion, plus $14 billion, plus $19 billion, all added to the deficit as they proclaim that they want to cut the deficit. But because they are banking on the press only writing down what they say they're going to do rather than what they're actually proposing, Republicans also took time today at their press conference to name drop a new Republican senator named Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio, inexplicably, has been made into the Republicans' showcase freshman for fiscal conservatism.
Our goal as a country should be to make sure that the next generation is a period of American exceptionalism or American greatness, as our new Senator Marco Rubio talks about.
Mr. Rubio, it should be noted, has been very specific about what his economic plan is coming to Washington. And because he says he's a fiscal conservative, you've probably heard that he's a fiscal conservative. But what's his actual plan? Well, in addition to all the generic Republican proposals to add hundreds of billions of dollars to the deficit, Marco Rubio also wants to make changes to tax policy on the alternative minimum tax and the estate tax, changes that would add an additional $989 billion to the deficit. And while he is proposing that, he would like you to say that he is a fiscal conservative. Just say it. It's like me insisting to you that I am short and pretty. Actually, I'm enormous and I'm sort of average looking. I mean, come on, somebody should report. Somebody should report so we can decide what it is that Republicans are actually proposing, not just what they are saying about what they're proposing. And this is not a new situation. Republican presidents have always tried to sell themselves, have always tried to sell the whole Republican ideology as if it's about somehow cutting down the red ink, getting back into the black, getting deficits under control, cracking down on the debt. But look at what they've done. Democratic presidents have exactly the opposite reputation on debt issues, but if you look at their record, they're the ones who've actually walked the walk. This year's crop of congressional Republicans are proposing adding to the deficit billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars for tax cuts for rich people, for new nuclear weapons, so oil companies don't have to deal with cap and trade, so health insurance companies don't have to insure sick people. Those causes are important enough to these supposedly fiscally conservative Republicans that they are willing to add hundreds of billions of dollars to the deficit in order to accomplish those goals. Debt be damned, deficit be damned, we don't care, those things are too important. But you know who they say has got to sacrifice? Here's the headline from today's Wall Street Journal about what's expected from the lame duck Congress. Spending worries put jobless benefits at risk. Even though Republicans are willing to spend hundreds of billions of dollars for all of those other things, you know where they draw the line? People without jobs, people who have paid into the unemployment insurance system and now would like to collect. People without jobs need to go without. Hey, gotta tighten your belt. Tax cuts for rich people? Sure. New nuclear weapons? Sure. Subsistence funding for the unemployed? Sorry, no way. Gotta be fiscally responsible. Writing down what they say is not reporting. If you just write down what they say, that's called publicizing. Writing down what they actually do, what they are proposing in terms of policy, that is reporting. And it is the distance between what they say and what they are actually doing that is the news.